Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Green Purple Luffy and Blue Purple Luffy have been two leaders that have been terrorizing our meta for the past month or two over here in the East, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of make a video going over each of them and showing you their strengths, weaknesses, and what decks can actually beat these guys. What decks are strong enough or have like the certain characteristics that actually can take down these two behemoths. And I know OP11 is going to be quite different for you guys in the West because you'll also have the new starter decks that are coming out. But I think it's important to know kind of like the strengths and weaknesses ahead of time. If you want to start planning what leaders you might be playing in that meta, I think it's a nice little head start, a nice little look into the future here. And hopefully it'll be helpful. But either way, I think it'll be interesting to kind of talk about it. And I think it's always fun to kind of break down the strengths, weaknesses, and what beats things, because it helps you learn and grow as a player, in my opinion. But without any further ado, let's just jump in and let's get started. All right, come along with me, come along, and let's roll the clock back to the first week of March. OP11 is not out yet, and it's the last week of the EB02 meta. And the flagship results roll in, and we see, wow, Green Purple Luffy with 30. He had also been dominating quite a bit throughout the meta, slowly pushing Dofi off of his throne, creating a really unique and pretty fun meta, to be honest. Didn't really love the resurgence of Enels that came in EB02, but you guys won't have to worry about that because of our friends over at Bandai banning Raigo. For all the Enel haters out there, shout out. F's in chat to all the Enel players, sorry, but not sorry. So yeah, GP Luffy dominating. Then let's roll the clock forward a little bit to the second week of March. OP11 is now viable. It's you can use them in larger tournaments, and holy crap, if Green Purple Luffy was pretty stunning getting 30, what does that mean for this Blue Purple Luffy? This was like crazy. This was super crazy week. Just getting 56 out the gate like that is insane. And then we can see the third week of March here. The aggro strategies and decks like Bonnie and Red Green Smoker that are decent into blue purple kind of, and also good into green purple, were popping up. This is where you saw a huge resurgence of the aggro decks like Bello Betty and Zoro. Kind of a wild time seeing Betty like essentially being tier 1. With Zoro just right behind her. Then we move into April. The cherry blossoms are blooming, the warm spring breeze is coursing through the air, and Blue Purple Luffy looks down on everyone with a menacing gaze and just beats the shit out of them. Yeah, 42. I mean, what was it? 56? Not as much as 56. So it's like he terrorizes people tech, and then he techs back and terrorizes. That's kind of like the moral of the story here. But then we have, the Japanese does say day, but this is actually the second week of April. The cherry blossoms are wilting. They're falling off the tree. The buds are blooming. Everything's turning green. And balance is like slightly, I mean, not really, right? This is 47. I wanted to say slightly restored. It's not really, but there are more leaders kind of winning flagships and a lot of the like CS, the regional qualifiers and stuff. But Luffy is just dominating. He's dominating like crazy. And not to only just rely on the flagship data, here is just like some pie charts from some of the unofficial tournaments like the Shumai Cup and the Tenryu Cup that happen in Tokyo, and these are like weekly or, you know, special event tournaments that are unofficial but gather, like, bring the strongest players from all around Japan. Often compete in these. I mean, not always, but you get some hard hitters that come to these tournaments. And I mean, you don't even, it doesn't matter if you can't read the Japanese, you can see the pie charts and you can just see what this is looking like. I mean, it's just Whitebeard all over again. It's Red Purple Law all over again, and Sakazuki all over again. And now, obviously, Blue Purple Luffy is not winning every single one of these, and a lot of the times it's like the counter pick of like Bello Betty, like a Red Green Smoker, a Green Purple Luffy, or a Lucci, a spicy Lucci list. Like, there's been Lucci's coming up recently. But the moral of the story is you can see what the top two leaders are every single time, and you can see how oppressive and strong they are. And it brings me to my question: if you don't want to play Green Purple Luffy or Blue Purple Luffy, which is like the road off to the right, the scary road, and you want to play just literally any other leader off into the sunshine over here to the left, what are the leaders that can actually do this? And I'll let you know. I'll tell you. It's gonna be essentially these guys. Obviously there are other picks, there are other leaders that are like kind of sleeper picks, there are other counters that do well into these two leaders here, or at least one or the other. But this little ragtag group of guys here, these mad lads here over on the left, are very, very strong, and they can beat one or both of these leaders. And I want to talk about them, but first let's roll it back a little bit. Let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each leader, and then I'll get into more detail of the leaders that can actually beat them. All right, so our smiley little jumpy boy here, Green Purple Luffy, he bursts onto the scene and everybody thinks, wow, what another mid extra booster EB leader. Great, cool. Next, pass. Sanji Pudding, what even leader does this card work with? Like, I don't know, this is dumb. Like, I guess we'll try it out in Purple Luffy. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, he's best deck in format. He beats Blue Doffy and like a ton of other decks. He beats Blackbeard, he beats Blue Doffy. He can stand his own. Even against unfavored matchups, he's still like pretty good. His high roll is insane. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe you're pretty good. That was the fun, interesting realization we all came to over here, at least in Japan. And let's go over some of his strengths. What makes him so strong? He's a 4-life leader. And in order for a 4-life leader to be strong, you have to have a very, very strong, inherently strong leader effect, like Exhibit A, Red Purple Law. The other thing is you need decent support. Even if your leader effect is very, very strong, take something like Yamato. If you don't have the proper support that can't keep up with the rest of the meta, you fall short and you can't do well. Like Yamato and maybe Marco are really good examples of this, where really strong leader effects on their own and with the right package could be top tier leaders, but they just don't always have it. They're not always there at the right time. But let's go what makes Luffy so strong. So he's getting insane value from the Dawn recursion mid late game with Sanji and Pudding. He's a tanky late game with the 6k leader buffs and the use of Gum Gum Giant. He can cheat out characters while also searching and increasing the power of your board. So you play out stuff like the 1-cost green Nami early game. You search with, when you're at sea, you fight with pirates. And then around your turn 2, turn 3, you start spamming out Zoro Juro. So you're also getting search while playing a 4-cost 6k that you can boost with the merry-go or the going merry stage. And then you start spamming Sanji Puddings. Some decks tech Luffy Taro. A lot of people played Luffy Taro at the start, but then took him out and they're adding him back in for OP11. It kind of just depends on the meta. And he has access to the purple Straw Hat package with additional green cards like Luna, Demonic Aura, Ashura, or as you might know it, Makusen, as we call it in Japanese, Giant Pistol, and even options of Hody and 9-cost Zoro. And I should have put 8-cost Kid in there. Sorry, I forgot. There was a small period where 8-cost Kid was a like 2 or 3 of tech in this deck. And even though you couldn't use the leader effect, it was strong enough to just help you survive against like a Doffy who was high rolling or something like that, right? Let's talk about his weaknesses though. He's weak to certain elements of removal like heavy black KO removal or blue events. If you don't see your stage and you can't raise the cost of your Zoros or Sanji Puddings, you are in danger of getting gravity bladed. Obviously Red Rock can get rid of anything, but just only getting rid of one unit on Luffy's board doesn't always feel great, especially if it costs you 6 Dawn. It relies heavily on Gum Gum Giant to cycle out counterless late game, so is weak to Hody and Dawn manipulation. So things like Hody or even the like Odyssey Luffy, they can rest your Dawn, or Dawn locking doesn't really matter because he can restand and gets Dawn back so much, but resting Dawn is very, very strong against this leader. The thing is in order to be as consistent as you want him to be, you really, really, really need to run a lot of search in like the when you're at sea you fight pirates event, and you are running counterless like your stage, and you're running Gum Gum Giant at 4. And what you're really trying to do is kind of cycle late game. You'll play a Gum Gum Giant, maybe you play it a little bit early just to cycle some cards in your hand, especially if you have another Gum Gum Giant in hand. And if you deny that by essentially pressuring them down and then having Hody to rest that Dawn, you could have a Luffy with like 6 cards in hand. They're 5 bricks, you know, 5 bricks and like 1 2k counter or something like that. It ends up happening a lot more than you might think. So this is a leader that definitely gets caught with his pants down. You can catch him off guard, especially if you have that Hody, and is what makes green so strong against him. The other thing is normally doesn't really run any top end, so most characters only reach up to like 7 or 8k, and honestly it's like mostly 7k with Sanji Pudding. If people are teching Luffy Taro, there's that. There's the occasional 9-cost Zoro, there's the occasional 8-cost Kid, but besides that, it's you know, you're looking at a lot of 6 to 7ks, and like the 6-cost secret rare Luffy is a 7k as well. And the other thing is it can't get around 8-cost Kid easily, not very easily. Even when you're running Gamma Knife, even when you're running the 6-cost Brook, it's a little hard, and you don't always have room to run these techs, because if there are other things like Lucci that you need to worry about, you might be running other things to kind of like try and play around that. It's hard to tech for everything for green purple Luffy. You normally want to run Luna for like the mirror and some of the more aggro decks, so there's just not enough time in the day, there's not enough space in the deck for Luffy to be able to get around everything. Yes, if they draw their 1 or 2 Gamma Knife and you only have 1 blocker on the board as like the Bonnie or the red green Smoker, if they Gamma Knife your Kid and have like 5 attacks to go into it, yeah, they can get around it and you can lose from that. But a lot of the times you're forcing them into a situation that's like, do you have it? If you do, you have a shot. If you don't, you just lose. So it's obviously a weakness there. And let's move on to talk about what decks can actually beat it. So going off of what I was talking about, basically like fortress decks or decks that can run 8-cost Kids strongly, like Bonnie or red green Smoker, are very strong against green purple Luffy. I would say the main crutch of Luffy is he can't get around 8-cost Kid very easily, and cards like 10-cost Dofi are actually really strong against him. If you're running a Rouge, 8-cost Kid, and 10-cost Dofi and Bonnie, you're just heavily favored into that matchup. If you're a Smoker and you're running 4 Kids and you see one, you're heavily like you're favored in that matchup. The other ones that I want to talk about are Lucci. Lucci was maybe a little contentious during the time of our EB02. Some people would tell you it was 50-50. Some people would tell you it's like heavily favored for Lucci. I think he resides somewhere between 50-50 to slightly favored against green purple Luffy. The thing is too is like in OP11 people are taking 10-cost Kuzan in Lucci for the blue purple Luffy matchup, and that makes it very favored for Lucci. If there's really Luffy has no way to answer 10-cost Kuzan, so once that bad boy hits the board, it's kind of just GG's. There's not much you can do as the Luffy player. Now, I don't know if Lucci's going to be able to run 10-cost Kuzan in EB02. If he is, then he's going to be really good. If not, he's just a strong leader with heavy, obviously still strong even after the bans, with a lot of heavy KO power, and I think he can do very strong against Luffy. The other cards here, Zoro can sometimes like out aggro Luffy to the point where just like with the leader effect you're just going 6 a lot, and even though Luffy is a 6k leader, he's actually depending on that to like make it so that you can't attack him sometimes. With like Bonnie, sometimes you just have to like you have a 5k leader, you can't put a Dawn on leader, you just have to pass, or like, you know, you don't get the extra leader attack in, right? Zoro essentially says like, not me buddy, I'm attacking with literally everything. And if Luffy's not running Luna, Zoro can definitely run away with the matchup, and even if they are running Luna, it can be kind of tricky. It kind of just depends on the Luffy build. Same thing for Betty. Like Betty can definitely overpower Luffy, and it just kind of depends if he has Luna and sees it on time, or even sometimes you need multiple Lunas in order for Luffy to beat Betty. But I would say overall Zoro is probably a little bit more well equipped to handle the matchup. And the other thing too is the green 4-cost Zoro that can rest and attack characters is very strong for the aggro matchups. But Luffy is not always running it. It just kind of depends on the meta. It depends on people's lists. But when Luffy is running that 4-cost Zoro, he does better against aggro. The one other deck that I wanted to mention that is good against green purple Luffy is Shanks. And this started happening towards the end of EB02. People just started running a very like heavy KO heavy version of Shanks that ends up doing very well, even just using the stage. A card that really hadn't been brought to the spotlight before. Some people ran it as like a one of, or just like a tech, or just like, you know, some spicy KO builds at the very beginning of like OP9 even. But yeah, Shanks with like 7-cost Newgate and the stage on board can essentially just KO anything. Luffy is a little bit weak to KO power stuff, because yes, they can raise the cost with the stage, but they can't raise the power on, you know, their opponent's turn. So if Shanks is able to set up, they can kind of run away with it. But nonetheless, another deck that I wanted to mention. And so these are essentially, like, you know, what I would consider some of, if not most of, the best leaders against Green Purple Luffy. Things are going to be a little bit different since there's the bans and you guys are going into a slightly different EB02 than we did over here in the East. Yeah, those are things to look out for. I hope that was helpful. That was the main focus of what I wanted to talk about for this video, but I am also going to talk about Blue Purple Luffy here. So let's move on over to that. All right, this is the boy, the new bad boy, the best deck in format over here in OP11, and his strengths are that he has an inherently broken leader effect. Wow, that's a good starting point. Essentially, just late game, drawing 2 cards per turn. Just the way I look at it is you're just exponentially creating unrivaled power. That's like the only way I can put it. And he has access to the best defensive and removal options of the game in essentially like blue removal events and then Gum Gum Giant, obviously, plus healing with 9-cost Mom. And that's a removal too. So yeah, and just the combos with like stuff like 8-cost Katakuri, obviously 9-cost Sanji into all these things is just crazy. And then he has the added benefit of being like a 6k leader with ramping. So all of the benefits of Red Purple Luffy, but with an even more broken leader effect and what's arguably a better color typing and card pool for this type of leader. So I mean, there's so much I could go into for this, but I'm going to keep it simple. Those are the main strengths and these are the weaknesses. Can't keep up with intense early game aggro. As I was saying before, like some of the aggro decks are the only answer to Blue Purple Luffy. He fortunately does have weaknesses in that regard, but you know, like it's still like if he can make it to the 9-cost Mom turn, and if he has multiple 9-cost Moms, even aggro can end up just not having a shot. So very depends, but he's not good at handling very early game aggro. He's the best deck in format, so that means he's got a target on his back, and it's hard for him to tech for everything. We're always seeing every week it changes. It literally changes every week for like a counter pick that pops up, and then Luffy has to go like, oh, okay, I got to tech for this. Like just recently, Lucci kind of came up, and without Red Rock or the Rush 9-cost or 8-cost Luffy's in the deck, it is a little bit difficult for Luffy to handle Lucci. But as soon as he switches around some of his cards, in my opinion, I don't think Lucci is favored against Luffy if they have like any tech cards at all. And by it's not even really tech, if they just have depending on the list, I think Luffy can still comfortably beat Lucci most of the time. But there's other reasons that Lucci is doing well right now. It's not just the Blue Purple Luffy matchup. And he's weak to things like Hody and Dom manipulation. So same thing as Green Purple Luffy. There are a lot of similarities, especially in their weaknesses, which is what makes a lot of the leaders like Bonnie and Red Green Smoker decent into both of them, right? And you can't always run answers for boss monsters like 9-cost Zoro and 10-cost Kuzan due to aggro meta, or like the whatever XYZ meta, right? So you could do the reverse too. You can't always run the answers for aggro because of decks like Bonnie or Lucci or just these like big hitter decks, right? So he has to like constantly choose and like adapt to the changing meta and kind of pick and choose what matchups he wants to be really strong against. So those are the strengths and weaknesses. What are the decks that can actually beat him? These are, in my opinion, most of the decks that can beat him. I think up there at the top is just Bella Betty. If Bella Betty high rolls, there's literally nothing Blue Purple Luffy can do, and they just beat them. I think it's 70-30, and even when Luffy is teching for Betty with like stuff like Gravity Blade, playing more counter, I still think it's pretty close to 70-30. Maybe it's closer to like 65-45. Red Green Smoker is really good because you can run this more kind of aggressive. At first people were keeping an 8-cost Kid and just like trying to hit your curve, but now they're even running more aggro stuff like 5-cost Luffy or even Kid and Killer more recently, and just running a really aggressive, powerful version of Red Green Smoker that can stand up to Blue Purple Luffy. And just getting the Dawn restanding with leader effect means that you just get so many more like 6-7k swings in from the early point, and that's what's so important. And also just like hitting your curve of like 5-cost Smoker into Hody, having Tashigi to help prevent things from getting bottom decked is very important. I do feel like Smoker, being a 4-life leader, it is very, very important that you kind of see your cards on curve. If you don't curve out well enough, Blue Purple Luffy can definitely just take advantage of that and end up trampling all over you. And then there's Bonnie. We got my girl, still my favorite leader to play right now in the OP11 meta. And Bonnie, I think, goes kind of back and forth. It just depends on what the Luffy list is. I think the matchup goes, but it's in general 50-50 in my opinion, and then just depending on what the list is for Luffy and Bonnie, it can go from slightly favored to slightly unfavored for either. Like no red rocks and Bonnie running 4 Zoro and like a lot of like 1-cost beige, in my opinion, moves the matchup slightly favored. But when Luffy's running stuff like red rock or Kyros on curve, Mihawk, things to get around like early Tashigi plays, or just being able to bottom deck Zoro if Bonnie doesn't see Tashigi, or if Tashigi gets bottom decked or KO'd earlier. There's things, right? There's different things that each leader can do, but at the end of the day, definitely a good leader, a good leader into Blue Purple Luffy. And then there's Zoro, kind of doing the same thing as Betty, but doesn't have the same explosive power. So because of that, if Luffy has like a little bit easier time stabilizing, and if they stabilize with multiple 9-cost moms, I think they can just control the board and then end up just beating Zoro. I already kind of went over Lucci here, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I think Lucci is decent into Blue Purple Luffy, especially if they high roll and like if they see Jack and Kuzan on curve and Luffy can't answer it immediately, then Lucci can run away with it. And then there's also Marco. Marco came up in OP11 as an answer to Blue Purple Luffy because he can be very strong. Luffy players had to basically start teching the 9-cost Mihawk in order to handle the 7-cost Newgate on curve, stuff like that, where Marco can KO like an 8-cost and a 9-cost, or 8k and a 9k pretty easily with like the current builds that we have, which is really, really interesting. And I think he's a cool leader in OP11. But at the end of the day, same thing, kind of a 4-life leader. If you don't see your curve, you're in trouble. And if it gets into the late game, you're just not going to be able to outlast him. I think Bonnie and Lucci are the 5-cost or the 5-life leaders. They can kind of like go tit for tat going into the late game if they have things set up well enough. If you have a Zoro already established, it doesn't get removed. If you have a 10-cost Kuzan, you can slowly beat out Luffy going into the late game. But like if it goes on late enough, like Luffy can always just end up winning, right? But yeah, those are the leaders that I think that either beat Luffy or do well into Luffy. All right, so thank you guys. I hope that didn't go on for too long, but I want to know, what are you going to play? What are you interested in? Did this help you kind of like get an idea of what you might want to play for EB02, and then even looking forward into the OP11 meta? Let me know. I think there are a lot of options for you guys in the West, so I'm really excited. Do you think I might be missing some? I might be missing a leader or two, or if you think there's like a leader like Usopp that you actually think really can beat Green Purple Luffy, let me know. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I miss things, but let me know. And I just want to say thank you. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps me a lot. And I am streaming over on Twitch and YouTube 2 to 3 times a week, so you can check me out obviously here on the YouTube channel, and then at Fidelio TCG over on Twitch and Twitter. And check out the Discord if you're interested. The link is down in the description below. And yeah, I just want to say a big thank you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.